A warm welcome once again to Smart 24 Television. This is the business edition. We are going to have a look at the stories that made the headlines in our weekly bulletin, and this is how we do every Sunday, like at this very time. Among the stories we're going to look at is the International Monetary Fund projections saying that in this 2023, all the economies, there's going to be a lot of hardships in as far as economic growth is concerned. More of these stories will be coming up in your way. My name is Pedison Momberry. Just stay around, I'll be right back. Welcome back from that commercial break. The business edition starts now. Like I said, we're going to look at the International Monetary Fund projections. In this 2023, most of the big economies like China, US, and Europe are now facing hard economic growth. And this is going to affect even other economies here in Africa. Therefore, officials from the International Monetary Fund, they were like, this is the time we should prepare for hard economic conditions. Our reporter did this very story. Let's have a look at the details.
COVID-19, Russia-Ukraine war, inflation are one of the issues slowing down productivity in major economies like the United States, Europe, and China. According to Kristalina Georgieva, head of the IMF, a third of the world will experience an economic recession this year, and nations should prepare for much harder times ahead.
We have calculated that about 1/3 equivalent of the world economy would have at least 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth this year, next year, and that the total amount that would be wiped out by the slowdown of the world economy is going to be, between now and 2026, $4 trillion. This is the size of Germany GDP gone. And when we look at the picture, we are asking what are the drivers and, of course, what can be done. What are the drivers? They are the forces of disruption I started with, the impact of COVID on supply chains, the senseless war that is causing a push of prices, especially energy and food prices, and major disruptions as a result in how economies function.
On the other hand, lawmakers have warned the government against spending excessively on items that do not benefit the nation during times like these, when international organizations issue warnings about impending economic calamities.
So, for example, here in Uganda, they gave us a document. We are in a budgeting cycle, and we saw the document the Minister of Finance brought of almost 50 trillion. But unless if the government now starts making clear priorities, still we shall get a problem, because now that our bosses, we are perpetual borrowers from IMF and all those international monetary companies and the organizations. So now if they have warned that they have sensed a danger ahead, so it's high time that we, the government, we also see how we can take appropriate steps to mitigate the challenges which are yet to focus. If China and America said there is a recession soon, then Uganda, we need to sit down and strategize.
The MPs contend that productivity must take precedence now in order to reduce the need for imported items and boost exports, which will raise the nation's foreign exchange revenues.
As Uganda, we are largely a consumptive country. We only import and import. Very little goes out. So we get a little and we consume a lot. And most of the things we consume are coming from outside. So it's a very serious situation if we don't have anything much to export. 2, the warning is based on a global trend. Look at the Asian countries. Look at Europe. Europe, I think their focus has now shifted to arms. The focus on the arms race and whatever, who produce the best arms, weapon, which Uganda cannot do. We can't compete with America, for that matter, to export arms to fight in the Ukraine. And from the beginning, we thought it was the Ukrainian and the Russian factor, but As things have turned out, this is a global phenomenon. Everybody is affected. So unless countries come together and say, hey guys, can we sit together and see how amicably do we solve this thing? It's no longer Ukraine, it's no longer Russia, but it's a global thing.
In order to brace for economic problems this year, as the IMF has cautioned, the legislators have also advised Ugandans to review their daily expenses.
So what I'm telling Ugandans, they need now to also get priorities. We are having children going back to school this end of this month and the next month. So we need now to sit as a family, as an individual, as a Ugandan. Because once a Ugandan has no money, because Uganda gets money from its citizens, once the citizens have no money, it is automatically the country will have no money. So now that the IMF has warned, then it should trickle down to an individual, to a citizen, to see how also can make right choices and right priorities.
The household income, at the end of the day, you have to buy soap, you have to buy salt, you have to buy sugar. I think people have to be prudent in the way they utilize their daily income. We just have to have some savings if possible, but generally to watch how we spend our money on a daily basis.
However, given that many have increased output over the past few months, and there is anticipation that exports would improve, some lawmakers are confident that Uganda may not be as significantly impacted by the global economic slowdown.
But according to me, it may not be as worse as 2022 because we can see people have gone back into production. The economy, like in the view of Africa and Uganda, I think when we continue like this, we have rains, we have white. I think will not be as it will not be as it was in 2022. Globally, yes, it may be a worst economy, but for Uganda, I'm optimistic.
With COVID-19 on the rise in China and US, the Ukraine war in Europe that is not set to end, an economic recession will eventually affect the entire world. Samla Hanifa, Smart 24 TV.
That's the International Monetary Fund trying to caution most of the economies to prepare for the worsening economic conditions 6 big countries are going to face the same. See, if those countries face the economic growth problems, that means it's going to accelerate coming down to other African countries. So it's time for us to prepare. And it's almost the MPs cautioning government to reduce on its expenditure to prepare for this in this very year, 2023. Now, when Uganda was joining the new year, 2023, there are very many things that happened, including the death of our young Ugandans who died at Ugandan Freedom City. This tragedy claimed very many lives of the young people that caused due to stampede that happened there. Let's have a story. Let's see what happened over there and see what police had to say about this.
In the stampede that occurred during the New Year's Eve celebrations, 10 individuals have been officially confirmed dead, but dozens of families are still grieving the loss of their loved ones. Some of the organizers are currently being held by police while they continue their investigations, according to the authorities.
The tragic incident of a stampede where 10 Ugandans, including children, died. We so far arrested the promoter of that New Year concert, that is the promoter of Abitex, that is Abe Musinguzi, and we are also actively searching for the organizers, for the other organizers and managers of that New Year concert at Freedom City Hall. The facts gathered indicate that more than 500 revelers and concert goers were celebrating the end of year and the ushering in of the new year at Freedom City in Namasuba on the 31st and 1st. The celebrations were progressing well till that point where the master of ceremony recklessly made an announcement for the concert goers to move out and watch the fireworks display in the parking and probably thereafter return to the concert. Now, the packed crowd became dangerous after the rush for fireworks from the hall through a narrow corridor to the only exit entry point led to a panic mode because the local security guards had locked all the other gates, about 4 other exits and entries. So as a result, several victims were trapped, others trampled upon through the narrow passage, which became a real bottleneck for some of the juveniles.
Legislators contend that event planners should think about their attendees' protection as well as the money they stand to make from the event in order to avoid future tragedies of this nature.
This is a wake-up call to the organizers, but also to security agencies that do manage some of these events. We have like a Nambole Stadium. We have prescribed numbers that are supposed to access the stadium at a time or when a particular event is happening. Parliament, we have the numbers that are defined to be accommodated at a particular time. So I think we should be strict when it comes to this.
The escape outlets must be there, must be properly reserved. In case of such miscellaneous, then there are such outlets that must be into operation to save people's lives from such undefined death. However, it was, I think, due to negligence of the organizers that they did not anticipate what would come out as a by the way. And also, I cannot condone people that maybe they came in a big number, because as they were coming, they could not predict what was inside.
Even in the middle of difficulties, the entertainment business may contribute to the enrichment of Ugandans. The sector is still extremely young, therefore there are plenty of undiscovered prospects. Bronia Katsime, Smart 24 TV.
That was really sad news coming up from Freedom City over there that claimed the lives of our young Ugandans. According to information, over 9 people were killed due to that stampede that happened when people were joining the new year, the 2023. And according to some of the information, the organizer of this event is also under court to see or trying to get more information over there. And that's what the police had to say about that. RIP. Now getting to another story here, we're going to speak the Uganda-Kenya trade relationships. In the reign of Uhuru Kenyatta, Uganda faced a lot in as far as trade disputes is concerned with Kenya, and this affected most of the economic growth of the two countries. Now, most of the Ugandans are hoping that now that since William Ruto has come to be the president of Kenya, there is hope of improving the trade relationship between the two countries. Let us have a look at most of the legislators anticipated in this very year. The Democratic Republic of Uganda and Kenya has been facing a lot of trade disputes, and this has put an embargo in as far as economic growth of the two countries is concerned, and Uganda suffered more than Kenya. Now Ugandans are asking themselves, will William Ruto's presidency improve the trade relationships of the two countries? As a matter of fact, under former President Uhuru Kenyatta, economic ties between Uganda and Kenya were among the most hazardous in the area, with threats coming from both the public and private sectors in violation of the agreements made with the East African community. Geoffrey Macho, a member of parliament representing Busia municipality, a Ugandan district that borders Kenya, considers William Ruto's victory to be significant in as far as boosting trade between the two countries is concerned.
The coming in of President Samuel William Ruto as the 5th president of Kenya, our people on the border have expectations that he's going to improve business within the cross-border fraternity. Because first of all, President Samuel William Ruto is a businessman. And before he came in, we had the challenges that the government of the president, who was there by that time, was shifting goals in the trade agreements. And that's why you saw Uganda face a challenge of having a blockage of maize, grey maize that was going to Kenya.
as our elder, President Museveni, have the challenge to lead the charge on ensuring that we bring down the boundaries and the borders and the barriers so that we can have a borderless East Africa community.
Kenya is both the cheapest and quickest trade route for Ugandan trade in the areas, as well as Uganda's biggest trade partner. The relationship between the former president's administration and the Ugandan government has been sluggish as he nears the end of his second term in office.
Kenya-Uganda trade engagement as of now, between the period of Kenyatta and now President William Ruto, is moving on well. I am aware that President Ruto, having a business background, during the Independence Day, he had an engagement with the President Museveni, and he led a delegation of more than 10 ministers and technical people, including traders and private investors from Kenya. Private sector players came here on the 9th of Independence. They had a bilateral meeting with President Museveni to discuss issues of trade, industry.
I see a lot of improvement in the coming in of Kenya Kwanza government, because when President Samuel Ruto came in, Kenya had stopped export of eggs to its country. But immediately he lifted that. He lifted that, and there is a booming business in the poultry sector.
According to records, a restriction on Ugandan milk products was enacted in 2020, resulting in the confiscation of 54,310 kilometers of powdered milk and 263,632 liters of Ugandan milk, totaling to 573 million and 643 million, respectively. The second embargo, which caused a stir, was on maize from Uganda. According to the Kenyan government, Ugandan maize contained unsafe levels of aflatoxins for its citizens. On his visit to Uganda for independence celebrations, therefore, the Kenyan president-elect William Ruto advocated for the elimination of trade wars.
Africa region, for us to work together so that we can transform our borders, which today stand out as barriers, and convert them so that goods, services, and people can move across this East Africa without any impediments.
For years, if not decades, Uganda has been a supermarket of sorts for products made elsewhere. Kenya has always benefited from both access to cheap Ugandan raw materials and fresh produce for its agro-processing industry and market for finished products. However, trade wars between Kenya and Uganda started to become obvious when Uganda's exports to Kenya increased in 2017, when for the first ever Uganda reported a trade surplus with one of its biggest trade partners. Truth of the matter is that during the reign of Uhuru Kenyatta, Uganda suffered a lot in as far as trade is concerned. Now, this is Geoffrey Macho, MP, Busia Municipality, trying to give his views. Like this time during Ruto Williams' presidency, Uganda has hope of improving the trade relationship between the two countries. Remember, Kenya has been banning most of our products entering to Kenya. Remember, the eggs, milk, and very many products. So we've been facing rough, and this is what has affected even the economic growth of the two countries, that's Kenya and Uganda. But mostly, Uganda was the most affected. Now, getting to another story here. Remember, at every end of the month, Uganda Bureau of Statistics has to release the inflation prices or the inflation figures of some of the items that we sell here in Uganda. Our reporter Bronia Katsime went at the statistics house and brought us some of the prices of the commodities, how they went, or the prices of some of the promises, how they fared in last year's annual inflation figures. So let's have a look at this very report.
Food crops, energy, fuel and utilities were the main sources of inflation in Uganda in 2022 as a result of fluctuating prices for products and services and liquid energy, respectively. Energy, fuel and utility inflation in December 2021 was 3.2% compared to 10.2% in December 2022 and 3.2% in December 2021, respectively. Petrol was registered at 19.2% to 22.0% in the year 2022, diesel at 20.7% to 36.1%, kerosene at 4.2% to 45.4%, charcoal at negative 6.5% to 12.2%, whereas food crops and related items inflation registered 2.8% in 2021 to 29.4% in 2022, which exposed some regions of Uganda to food insecurity. Matoke Bunch registered 28.7% in December 2021 to 77.9% in December 2022. Beans at negative 15.6% to 30.2%. Whole cassava at 1.8% to 74.7%. And Irish potatoes at 1.9% to 35.6%. Director of Economic Statistics Lubega discusses why it is unwise to predict the costs of other goods in connection to fuel prices.
It is very, very hard because if you speculate that since petrol is coming down, petrol can come down, but the food is not available. So the inflation will not come down. Other than the transport, the petrol, there are other factors that will influence this inflation. And so I wouldn't want us to speculate that since the prices of fuel is coming down, then we should be speculative and say that the inflation will come down. No, because it is not the only driver of the inflation.
As commodity prices remained high, Uganda's inflationary pressures impacted the supply and demand for various retail commodities. In comparison, the national average retail prices of selected goods measured in units from 2021 to 2022 December, the average price of 1 kilogram of matoke was 770 Ugandan shillings in 2021 December, which increased to 1,292 Ugandan shillings. 1 kilogram of fresh cassava was at 644 to 1,119. 1 kilogram of cassava flour at 1,576 to 2,779. 1 kilogram of maize flour at 2,160 to 3,977. A kilogram of fresh beans at 4,252 to 5,243. A kilogram of tomatoes at 1,584 to 2,307. A kilogram of passion fruits at 5,540 to 6,660. A liter of petrol at 4,499 to 5,532. A liter of diesel at 4,061 to 5,505. And a liter of paraffin at 3,196 to 4,600.
The restaurants, even transport, the moment there is an effect in the transport. So these are kind of interlinked. The influence in the food prices will also influence the other components of the inflation. And that one, yes, I agree.
The annual headline inflation by income groups and geographical areas revealed that Fort Portal registered the highest inflation of 13.2%, and the second highest inflation was registered in Arua at 12.4%, and Kampala High Income registered the least annual inflation with 8.6%. Bronia Katsime, Smart 24 TV.
Yeah, these are some of the statistics that are coming up from the Uganda Bureau of Statistics. At the end of every month, these statistics will always come to you so that you get to know the prices of some commodities and how the prices were going on in that thing and how these things were done during the last month. This is the annual headline inflation figures that Bronia Katime has just brought for us. Now we're getting to another story here. We're going to speak the budget framework paper that was supposed to be reviewed in Parliament. And to make matters worse, the Minister of Finance that was supposed to be in charge of this or that was supposed to be scrutinized did not appear. I saw Honorable Margaret Namuga, an MP, making a lot of statements were like, these people have wasted our time and they have wasted resources. They should have appeared and see how we can scrutinize this budget framework paper. Unfortunately, they never turned up. Our parliamentary reporter Samuel Hanifa was on ground, and let's have more of these details.
The Budget Committee only has 15 days in Parliament to review the budget framework paper, and today was supposed to be their first meeting with the Ministry of Finance officials. However, the meeting was cancelled, which lawmakers found to be unacceptable.
Today's meeting, the Budget Committee and the chairpersons of sectoral committees were supposed to meet the Minister of Finance to explain more or to draw more insight into the budget framework paper. However, Finance has not turned up. This is an indication that Finance presents documents to Parliament when they are not ready. The Leader of Opposition on 21st mentioned it to the Speaker that I want to look through what the ministers submitted, because they always submit dummy documents and they think they will get more time later on to submit what is appropriate.
Honorable Namuga asserts that the committee expects Finance to provide a written explanation of why they have failed to appear before the committee, since frequently meetings are planned and witnesses do not show up, wasting taxpayers' money that could have been put to good use.
We've sat, we've used all the facilities of Parliament. We've taken tea, we've driven cars from different areas, and people are going to be paid for no work done. So the Minister of Finance should take Ugandans seriously. We should provide sufficient services and in the right time. They made a commitment in their Charter of Fiscal Responsibility that we shall reduce all the inefficiencies and those areas that are nugatory within the budget. These are some of the areas. This is at Parliament. You will find this in the Ministry of Finance, meetings, sitting so many times, and people, non-productive. So we should reduce on wastage of the taxpayers' money, and we should look towards giving services in the right time and adequately. So Parliament, we've resolved at the Budget Committee, Minister of Finance should submit in writing to the Budget Committee chairperson the reasons as to why they have not attended today's meeting. And if at all they don't turn up on Monday, we shall take another direction. Thank you.
The National Budget Framework Paper is supposed to appear in a sectoral manner in accordance with parliamentary rule, but the government presented it in a programs format contrary to those rules, something that the legislators want the Ministry of Finance to fix on Monday when they appear.
They have presented the budget framework paper on a program basis. Now, the program basis is not captured within our laws as Parliament, our rules. So the committees of Parliament is set in a sectoral manner, not under programs. So which means that the manner in which they are presented, the budget framework paper, is not aligned to our rules. So we wanted them to come and highlight and guide how we are going to analyze the paper.
In the rules of Parliament, the BFP and all the budget issues are handled by sector committees. So they handle sector by sector, which are linked to votes. And now when the BFP is in a program style, there is therefore need to get the detail and see what is allocated where, and then we resolve and move on. However, Finance today requested that they couldn't make it, and therefore the meeting is now called for Monday, 9 o'clock.
Members of Parliament who sit on the Budget Committee were eagerly waiting for officials from Finance to appear and discuss the budget framework paper, but this has not happened because Finance has not appeared. They have only given Finance up to Monday, and if they do not appear, they are going to decide as a committee on what to do. Samla Hanifa, Smart 24 TV.
So these are the MPs who made their own complaints, saying that sometimes even Minister of Finance presents dummy work, which is not even clear. And they were just making a lot of statements, urging why did they miss. But according to the Parliamentary Committee on Budgeting chair, it's like these people communicated, so I don't know what brought all these issues. And I will be going in for a short commercial break. When I come back, more of the stories will be coming up on your way. My name is Pedison Mumbere. Stay around.
Smart 24, driving business.
Waina mobile money kumulyango ordinary ticket ya mutwalo gumone chitundu VIP mitwalo 8 chitundu kane mwe spicy gadgets spicy gadgets spicy nuggets mwana mwe iwe lugo quick over la haulo mwana ngenda kunyenya watu na chingulira bino bino kabitendwa mu center MTN.
It's super fast internet. Oh, it's a super camera. It's a super battery.
Phone battery full.
Yeah, it's a super deal. Get the Kabode Super from MTN now at a reduced initial deposit of only 49,000 shillings and pay the balance in Pola for as low as 833 shillings per day. Grab this Super Kabode deal this Christmas and get 2 GB of free MTN data every month for 8 months. Get the Kabode Super now from any MTN shop countrywide. Everywhere you go, MTN. Regulated by UCC.
Conductor Masao.
Hey, why? Kubadolo byokusimu.
Yamunange anti your TV enkolera.
Enjoy a new world of entertainment with over 80 TV and radio channels plus movies from wherever you are. Download the YoTV Channels app from your app store and enjoy 30 days of free streaming with MTN.
YoTV Channels.
Smart 24, driving business.
A great welcome back from that commercial break. The business edition is still going on. Like I said, the Kampala capital city has received funding equivalent to 288 million US dollars. That's equivalent to 1 trillion for road maintenance. I saw Dorothy Kitaka, the executive director, Kampala Capital City Authority, trying to make statements that this money is going to make sure that the road maintenance is done. And it's not only the roads, that's according to her. They are going also to make pathways, trying to make drainage systems very well on the road and very many roads. So they started around here at Garden City, and then after they had to go to Nankolebe, that's Saplo, and then after they ended up at Salama Road, trying to work on those potholes in the roads that are trying to affect businesses on the roadways. However, some of the people were castigating them of just doing things on paperwork. They just come, do things, and they don't come back to come and finish up their work. Let's have more of this very story. with funding from the African Development Bank worth $288, that's over 1 trillion Uganda shillings. Kampala's Capital City Authority administration has finalized plans to rehabilitate 69.9 kilometers of roads in Kampala.
But when it comes to overhauling the roads, we've received substantial funding, $288 million, which is 1 trillion shillings, that is going to overhaul a total of 69 kilometers, excess of 69 kilometers. The roads we are going to rebuild are going to be wider than the current roads. They're going to have drainages, they're going to have walkways, they're going to have street lights. So these are going to be really modern, up-to-date roads, which we believe will last 15 to 20 years in the city.
The Kampala Capital City Authority Executive Director Dr. Dorothy Kisaka claims that by facilitating movements, this will enhance the business environment. Dust, which has a negative impact on the most people's businesses, will also be eliminated. That's why government has embarked on an emergency pothole repairs in all divisions to keep the roads motorable.
All the potholes, we have identified them. We don't need people going around taking pictures to send us. We have the pictures. We know where the potholes are, and we are fixing them. We are fixing them to make sure that the roads are motorable, even those which are going to be ultimately overhauled in the next 36 months.
These people just come for inspection and run away. These people are wasting time. If tarmacking is expensive, let them leave.
The condition of the roads in the Uganda's capital has recently raised complaints among a number of members of the public. The majority of the Kampala's roads are littered with potholes, which pose danger in terms of congesting lanes of traffic and harming cars.
The funding is not enough. We do what we can, and government has really come out. In the last project of KIDIP 2, we did 29 kilometers. These are roads. They are still existing. We have, you all know Stretcher Road, you know Kulambiro Road, you know the Kabusu Bunamwaya Road. Those are brand new roads that government has given us money to do.
Kampala Capital City Authority currently receives only 26 billion per year to maintain the roads. Reports indicate that KCCA annual consumptive budget cannot build all the infrastructures. Yeah, this is the money coming up from, but according to the executive director, Dr. Dorothy Kisaka, they have received this money. This money will come from the Ministry of Finance, and then it will come from government through the Ministry of Finance to their offices there, and they're going to start the work soon as possible. Now, getting to another story, we're going to discuss the electricity end user tariffs. Government is expected to reduce electricity tariffs by 1.2%, and this was during the 2023 annual tariff review. So they're trying to reduce on these electricity tariffs to improve on industrialization and trying to make for economic growth. This story was done by Mathanim Seaman. Let's have more of this very story.
In an annual attempt to facilitate transmission and distribution of electricity, the government works to lower electricity tariffs. Additionally, it exhorts the populace to take advantage of this chance and aid the government in expanding the power supply system to support the nation's socio-economic transformation.
A 1.2% reduction as a tariff reduction is something to congratulate ourselves about. Slowly but sure, we shall attain the tariff that we feel will cause production affordable, and therefore all of us will benefit.
In addition to the end-user tariffs for 2023, the electricity subsector has operationalized the Electricity Amendment Act 2022. The amendment has provisions on payment royalties, private investment in transmission segment, and direct purchase of electricity.
Started on operationalization of the Electricity Amendment Act of 2022. Many of you were in Parliament when this bill was passed into law, and on the 15th of May of this year, His Excellency the President of the Republic of Uganda assented to this bill, to this act.
Moving forward, government is accelerating electricity access to 80% by 2070 as per Vision 2040 and NDP3. This provision involves hybrid consumer connection financing framework, get access to power supply countrywide, energy access scale-up project, commissioning of the 600 megawatts Karuma hydropower plant, host of the Independent Regulatory Board of the Eastern Africa Power Pool, and establishing upcountry regional offices by the Electricity Regulatory Authority.
And under this framework, the government has reduced the cost of no-poor new customer connection from 720,883 Ugandan shillings to 470,000 Ugandan shillings through a subsidy of 250,883 Ugandan shillings for each no-poor connection. This is a subsidy. Emitwala 25 bedu. You are not going to pay that. As if that's not enough, the government of Uganda, through Uganda Development Bank, has provided a credit line of 270,000 Ugandan shillings. Credit line, which will not attract interest. No interest rate attracted. For those who are unable to pay the lump sum of 470,000, you have this credit line of 270, which you'll be able to pay slowly with no interest. That leaves you with 200,000 shillings that you are supposed to look for and pay upfront. You have been paying 720,000 upfront. Now you are going to pay 200,000 upfront.
Electricity end-user retail tariffs, which serve as the rates for the first quarter of 2023, January to March, and the setting of these rates give the general public the chance to boost consumption and output. It involves stepping up oversight of authorized energy service providers with regard to the caliber and dependability of the power supply.
The Uganda shilling has appreciated against the United States dollar from 3,810 shillings and 70 cents per dollar in the determination of the retail tariff for the fourth quarter of 2022 to shillings 3,738 and 33 cents on the 30th November 2022, as published by the Bank of Uganda. This represents an appreciation of 1.9%. The second assumption is that with effect from April 2023, Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited will assume the operation of Narubale and Kira hydropower complex. The demand assumption is that electricity demand is expected to grow at an annual rate of 8.31% in the year 2023.
The Electricity Regulatory Board has provided peak, shoulder, and off-peak timeframes to help users understand when energy prices are highest and lowest. Peak time is from 6 p.m. to midnight, when the energy charge is highest. Off-peak time is from midnight to dawn, when the energy charge is lowest. And shoulder time is from 6 a.m. to p.m., when the charges are moderate.
6 p.m. to midnight. The off-peak time is midnight to morning. And if you follow the documents that have been shared and the reading of the chair of ERA, that is the period when the price of electricity is lowest. And I remember she read 214 shillings as compared to the 808.9, which is the average for the domestic.
The weighted average tariff will be reduced by 1.2%, supporting a gradual industrialization of end users and increasing production capacity to maintain monthly billing invoices without compromising the financial viability of the electricity supply industry. According to authority, the quarterly tariff charge methodology, 2023 base tariffs are subject to quarterly adjustment. As a facilitator of industrialization for social and economic development, this goal of lowering the end user tariffs continues to be a major objective of the nation. Martha Nimsima, Smart 24 TV.
Yeah, that's the government of Uganda looking forward to reduce electricity tariffs by 1.2% to make sure that industrialization is harnessed for economic growth. And that's a very good way to go, because people are getting perturbed by electricity tariffs. If the tariffs are high, that means this is going to affect development in this country. Now we're going to speak about Uganda's transport makeover, where the government is looking forward to phase out borders that takes fuel or that are fueled. And they're going to make a swap. If you have a border that takes fuel, you're going to make a swap. They're going to give you another border that is electric, that do not take fuel, free of charge. So government is going to do this for you. However, there are still some discussions that are going on. Let's have more of this very story.
The president recently highlighted a move that will see the border sector, a significant portion of the services industry, become electric, and a phase out of fuel-powered motorcycles, one that raises problems for the entrenched fossil-reliant businesses and opportunities of the pending oil production, as a similar message was previously echoed by legislators. As 2023 takes shape, Uganda's position on e-mobility has gained strength.
Kampala they have their transport plan, and I believe the transport plan they have started slowly by sensitizing the border industry, the taxi and what have you. We believe there is also a plan to bring the public transport, to organize the public transport in Kampala.
Unsurprisingly, there is a disagreement among participants and institutions in the transportation sector, which has so far replaced buses and motorbikes, while the taxi business watches from the sidelines with trepidation.
The kilometers meka nze ndi musajja wa kilometers 205 kati no imbansolo gitwala n'enkomi yawo.
I ride about 250 kilometers. Can the charge sustain me for that long? What kind of electricity is it? Yet even the power we use at home is less effective. So how will it serve the motorbikes? From my perspective, I'm not sure. It may not work out, maybe in the future.
Walimu akakwakulizo president ke yateekawo nti buses zibereza amafuta, zibereza amasanyalaze.
There is a clause that the president instituted that the buses have to be electric and made in Uganda, Kira Motors. There is no importing. That's why I said there is a gap between the government's vision and the economic stance of the people. Because if you look at the electric bus, it goes for not less than 1 billion Uganda shillings.
Plans to switch motorbikes from gas to electricity at a free cost are expanding, but concerns about the efficiency of the energy industry persist. To make matters worse, importers relied on overseas research and development, such as the China's recently teamed with the International University of East Africa with funding from the UN Environment Programme.
This is at the heart of both production and consumption in households, in businesses, and everywhere. And so it comes out as a very, very sensitive sector like water, like security, that nobody wants to have margins of error in its management and strategy. People may not be able to afford it at a personal level, but they will have to access it. As you said, you want to go to a salon. Now, I may not have electricity in my own home, but certainly I want to find it at the salon. I want to find the mobile money agent where I'm going to transact money as a charged phone. So in one way or another, everybody will interact with electricity. So it becomes a very, very sensitive sector.
The killer motors, we also heard about the pronouncement by the president. The killer motors, if they manufactured enough buses, they are the ones going to operate in Kampala.
Exactly how inclusive the development is for the conventional operators that have controlled the transport sector for the most of this country's history will determine how the energy transition and mainstreaming the transport business on electric mobility will be conceived. Rona Nahabwe, Ivan Tibenkana, Smart 24 TV.
That's what I'm concerned about. You see, government is trying to make sure that the environment is conserved. So if they sweep off or if they phase out all these border borders that takes fuel, it will be very important. Remember, these border borders that takes fuel or that are fueled, they produce some fumes which are very toxic to the environment. So if they swap to border borders that are electric, it will be very important, though some negotiations are still going on. That's according to the government of Uganda. Now I'll be going in for a short commercial break, and when I come back, more of the stories are still here. Stay around. Now we're going to discuss the cocoa bill, whereby Uganda currently produces 44.7% metric tons of cocoa and is the 5th largest export in Africa, followed by Ivory Coast, Cameroon and Nigeria. Now, processors and farmers are in favor of the cocoa bill since it is going to regulate the cocoa value chain. Now, since we're doing better in this is a way to go to have this bill that is going to regulate the cocoa value chain. Our reporter Naomi Mtumba has all the details. Let us have a look then.
Uganda currently produces 44.7 metric tons of cocoa and is Africa's 5th largest exporter, following Ivory Coast, Ghana, Cameroon and Nigeria. Uganda made $105.8 million from cocoa in 2021, up from $64.8 million in 2018, a growth of 38.82%. However, despite this, Ugandan cocoa farmers and processors continue to face a number of difficulties, such as low bean quality brought on by a lack of training in post-harvest processing, which has an impact on the processors. The Buy Uganda, Build Uganda policy has not been well received by Ugandans either.
Of course, the quality of the cocoa beans which we find, which the farmers supply or provide to us is so bad. And of course, when you get a poor quality product, the end product also will not be good. So we want to make sure that farmers are well trained in terms of post-harvest handling. They should be in position to pick the ripe cocoa pods, ferment it very well. It should be fermented according to the recommendations by NARO. Of course, the National Agricultural Research Organization has recommendations on how we should ferment your cocoa. And after fermenting it, you have also to make sure that you dry it very well to attain a moisture content of around 8%. But most of our farmers, they sell their cocoa at a moisture of around 12%, moisture content of 12%, which is not a good thing.
We are facing the problem of Ugandans, them being obsessed with our imported products, e.g. Cadbury, rather than them supporting their own country. That's why we say Buy Uganda, Build Uganda.
Uganda Coffee Development Authority is working towards the formulation of the cocoa bill. Processors and farmers are positive towards this bill as it will help regulate the cocoa value chain.
Yeah, I think the cocoa bill is something which is very important for all of us, the actors within the cocoa value chain. Because when you look at cocoa, it is a value chain which is not regulated by government, and everybody does his own whatever he wants to do. But we think that if this bill is brought into action, the actors and the entire sector will be regulated, and this will result into making sure that our cocoa, Ugandan cocoa, which is brought onto international market, is of high standard, and it meets the international standards, and therefore people will gain confidence into it, and we shall attract more buyers, and the country will get more money.
Earlier this month, Amber James Bolivar, a cocoa farmer, stated that one of the issues influencing quality and access to extension services is the lack of a legislative framework governing the cocoa value chain.
We should not be exporting raw beans. We should be adding value here. We could start with cocoa butter. We could start with cocoa powder for confectionaries, for cakes and all this, but not export beans. That way we are cheated very, very badly. We would earn more money if we added value to our cocoa. Ghana is already defying the European Union of exporting beans. They want value addition. They want to export chocolate. And I think they are getting a hearing, and they have started.
Cocoa has been an important traded commodity since development of milk chocolate in 1876. In the global market for beverages, it is positioned alongside coffee and tea. The market for cocoa as a whole is thought to be worth 60 billion euros annually, and demand is steadily growing as a result of the health benefits it offers. Naomi Mtumba, Smart 24 TV.
Those have been the stories that made the headlines in our weekly bulletin, and I want to thank you for being a great view of Smart 24 television, especially this very program, the business edition. Remember to hook us on all social media platforms at Smart 24 TV official on Twitter, Smart 24 TV live on YouTube. You can as well follow me on my Twitter handle at Pedison Momber. In case of any business, please feel free to come over here at our offices at Nile Avenue so that we can make business with you at a fair price. I always say this over and over again. We're here to do business, we're here to drive business, and also helping some other business to thrive. Let's hook up again next Sunday. Stay